So before we start on this assembly, make sure that your files have been moved from your downloads into your student drive. So we need the disk cam assembly, which should look like this. You need your lifter, and then you also need the cam case itself. So I've already opened the disk cam assembly. From there, I'm going to put some more objects in there to play around with. So I'm going to go to place. I need to search for where I saved the cam case and the lifter. In your case, it should be under this PC, and scroll all the way down to your student drive. Because I don't have access to that, it's just in my Google Drive. So I'm going to click on cam case, and we can see an image pop up. I'm going to hold Control and click on lifter, and I'm going to hit open. So that allows me to snag both of those at the same time. And then I will left click. I'm going to hit escape. So I have all my parts within the assembly itself. Now, if you notice, if you grab these things, you can move them around. That's not the case for the actual disk cam. Now we want to be able to move it. So I'm going to right click on that guy, and I'm going to go to grounded. So that's going to allow us to actually move that thing the way we want it to. Now for assemblies, you always want at least one of these things to be totally grounded. So I'm going to choose the cam case. I'm going to right click on that and click on grounded so that whatever I attach to it is going to be stuck in that spot. So let's start attaching these. Kind of imagine this is going to be like a cheap version of a piston to a certain extent, where my lifter is going to go in and out of the cam case hole, and my disc cam is going to rotate around that peg right there. Excuse me. So let's start off with going up to constrain, and I want to force my lifter to go inside of that hole right there. So I am going to highlight the edge of that until I get that nice little axis right there. And I'm going to lock it into the same thing on this side. So I'm going to hover until I see that axis. And I'm going to say, okay, that works. Right? So my lifter can go in and out. It's not going side to side. Now, truthfully, it will go through, which shouldn't actually happen, but we're not super concerned about that quite yet. Let's do kind of the same thing for our disc cam. I want that to go on this peg right here. So I'm going to click on the axis. I'm going to click on the inside hole of that keyhole, and notice it locks it right into place for me. And that actually looks pretty good. So let's zoom out to my home view. Now we have a little bit of a problem because if I try to rotate this guy, there's a lot of give left and right because there's no constraint there. So let's do another constraint. And the goal of this is I want my disc cam to line up perfectly with that lifter right there, because I want them to come in contact with each other and actually be able to move and rotate and stuff like that. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to get a constraint between the face of that cam, or excuse me, the face of the base and the face of the cam. And when I select that, they kind of shoot together. But I can actually offset that so it's not directly in contact with each other. So maybe I offset it, like 0.125 or something like that. So just kind of eyeballing it so it's pretty close to being in the middle right there. And I'm going to hit apply. And I know it's good if I can rotate it and there's no weird give or other weird motion. So that looks pretty solid. So before we're able to animate this thing and really see the whole interaction, what I'm going to do is I need to make sure that this face comes in contact with the cam. So I'm going to go back up to constraints. Instead of doing a mate constraint, I'm going to select a tangent constraint and making sure that this outside tangent is connected. So that if I grab this guy and I can highlight the outer edge of my disc cam, those two should remain in contact with each other while we do the motion. So no matter how I kind of wiggle this thing around, my lifter is going to move with the disc cam. Now, one last thing that we need to do, seems to be kind of weird, but we need this to animate it later on, is I need to do just like an angle constraint to force it to change angles. And this one's a little bit weird. I'm going to go over here to the disc cam, and I'm going to open up origin, because I want to see one of these planes. Now, you don't always have to connect the faces of objects together necessarily. Sometimes we can get away with doing like planes and things like that. So I'm going to go to my disc cam. I'm going to click on origin, and let's pick, I don't know, let's pick XZ. And I'm going to change my visibility so I can see it. So my last constraint, I am going to click on this top face, and I just want them to be parallel to each other. So I'm going to click on that face. I'm going to change my constraint to an angular constraint and change it to a directed angle. And to connect it to the piece, I'm going to click on that work plane, and it should shoot to be 0 degrees. Now we can change that if we really wanted to. Probably doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. If you want 90 degrees, sweet, go for it. But I'm going to keep that as 0, and then I'm going to apply, and then we are good to go. Now we're ready to animate our piece, and if we want to make sure that everything is okay, we can kill that angle, we can suppress it, and we should be able to rotate that thing to make sure that it is actually working the way we want it to.